I just saw a great question come in from a gal named Haley who's 19, and she's wondering what it takes to get started to become a flight attendant. It's pretty easy to address because if you're not familiar with the industry, you might not know how to get started. So the first thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to go on every airline's website, and you're going to want to check to see if they're currently hiring flight attendants. If it's a mainline airline, some of them only hire language speakers, and then they will open up their broad application for flight attendants just for a few days a year. It just depends on the amount of demand that's needed for flight attendants for that airline. Now, if you want to get in sooner, regionals are always hiring because they have a lot more turnover. They have a lot more people that quit because you don't get paid as much and because it's just a harder lifestyle typically. And after you go on each airline's website to see who's hiring, most of them have a place where you can sign up for alerts to be alerted the day, the hour that flight attendant positions are posted. Because typically, if you're going for one of the more competitive airlines, a mainline like Delta, Southwest, American, or United, those applications are not going to be open very long because they get tens of thousands of applications in a year. That could be anywhere from like 60 to 100,000 applicants in a year. So it's extremely competitive. And the other thing to be aware of is depending on when you're applying, the demand could be higher or it could be lower for flight attendants. Mainline airlines did a tremendous amount of hiring in 2023, but in 2024, they've pretty much all cut back hiring. And since this person is 19 that's looking to apply, just be aware that different airlines have different age requirements. For some of them, it's going to be 19, some of them it's 20, some of them it's even 21. So if it is whatever that age is, you need to make sure you are that age before you actually apply. Otherwise, you might as well not apply. So just keep the age limits in mind, and also be aware that if you're not the right age yet, you can get customer service or serving experience while you wait to make yourself a more competitive candidate. And also, while you're waiting and you're in a holding pattern to see what airlines are applying and when their applications are opening up, get that resume ready. You need to make sure your resume is going to pass through those corporate filters. You need to make sure that your resume is tailored to be a flight attendant. So you need to be able to show that you have customer service or serving experience. And ideally, that's like 2 to 3 years minimum. You could have less, but you're going to be more competitive the more customer service experience you have. And on your resume, you're also going to want to show that you've dealt with challenges in the workplace, that you've overcome challenges in your professional life, and that you face those challenges with poise and professionalism. A lot of airlines have very strict policies about tattoos. So you're going to want to read up on your favorite airlines, your top airlines you want to work for, and make sure that your hair color, your appearance, and especially tattoos meet their requirements, because if they don't and you lie about that on your application, that can be grounds for getting fired. So just make sure that you meet the criteria for tattoos. Typically, airlines do not allow tattoos on your hands, face, or neck. So just something to keep in mind. If you do have tattoos, they may need to be professionally removed or dealt with in a way that meets the policy of the airline. There are some other side things that can actually disqualify you from being a flight attendant. Most US airlines require that you have no DUIs on your record, because it means that if that airline flies to Canada, you cannot fly into Canada if you've had a DUI on your record at any time. If that airline also needs to divert to Canada, you can't enter the country with a DUI, period. So if you have a DUI on your record, you're probably going to need to look into another career field. If you have a criminal record, all the airlines have to do a background check. They will also ask you questions about your background, and you have to be honest with those answers. If you do have any criminal record, you need to divulge that and be completely frank about it and forthcoming. Just be aware that a lot of different types of criminal records can disqualify you from being a flight attendant, especially when there's 50,000, 60,000, 80,000 other people who are trying to be flight attendants. It doesn't make you competitive anymore when they can pick somebody who has a completely clean criminal record and potentially poses a less on the surface risk to an airline. So you've got your resume ready, you start applying to the airlines, and maybe you get selected by one of the airlines. Well, there is going to be a multi-stage process in the hiring. And what that could look like is it could look like your resume, your application gets accepted. You might have to complete some kind of test to show that you can read English, to demonstrate that you can read simple instructions, to demonstrate that you can understand like customer service handling in different ways. So step 2 could be something like a written assessment online. And then after you pass that, it could be something like a video recording of yourself. And there are ways to make that easier, but I'm not going to get into those details in this short video. And then step 3 could be something like a one-to-one video interview with a hiring person from that company. And if you pass that stage, there's a pretty good chance that you could get an invite to what's called an F2F, or a face-to-face. And that is going to be essentially the last major step in the hiring process before you go to training. The other thing to be aware of is that typically airlines also have to do a drug test. So if you like to use marijuana, you're not going to get hired, period, because there are federal regulations that prohibit airlines from hiring people that fail drug tests. So if you do want to be a flight attendant, you can't smoke pot anymore. You can't use CBD products that have any amount of THC, because it could put you at risk of failing a drug test. Anything that could show up on a drug test, you cannot use those drugs if you want to be a flight attendant. So getting back to the face-to-face, that's going to be the last major step in the process. And then if you pass the face-to-face interview, you're going to get an invitation to the actual training. And the actual training with the airlines vary from about 4 weeks to about 6 weeks. And that varies depending on which airline you're working for. And the different cities where they host these trainings can vary quite a bit too. And then after you graduate training, then you are officially a flight attendant on the day you graduate. And typically on the day you graduate, you have flight benefits activated for yourself, so you can fly with those travel pass privileges with that airline, and sometimes some other airlines, but typically it's with that airline to begin with. And then you also you'll start working probably within a week or two, depending on the airline, but I would say the average is you'll begin working a week or two after you pass flight attendant training. I hope this video was helpful for you. If you have questions or comments or anything you want to share, go ahead and shoot me a DM or post in the comments, and I'd love to know what else you're curious about. But this was just a broad overview to help people understand what that process can look like to become a flight attendant if you're starting from scratch. Good luck.